Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn. To the thousands watching live on Zoom and the millions watching on YouTube, we welcome you all today for another fantastic session. We've got a great crowd on Zoom if you want to come along, but if not, then watch from the Facebook group. Why not? So, as per usual, well, actually not as per usual, because we have a new face, don't we? So, Michael, just to let you know how these things work. We do a couple of minutes at the beginning just talking about the parasha, and then we do some teachings, some lessons from Pirkei Avot. So, a little run through this week's parasha, and boy, is it a long one. It's going to be a double whammy this week. We are going to be doing Chukat and Balak in one fell swoop. Unless you are Israeli, like Michael over there, in which case they're just doing Balak this week. And they'll be in shul, and we won't. But please God, next week, from the 10th, we will be back in shul for our Shabbat services. So if you haven't seen any of the details about that, then please check your emails or be in touch with me. And if you're around tonight at 8 o'clock, then the Rabbi, Rebbitzin, rabbinic team will all be online for a fireside chat talking about adjusting to life back in Sparrow's Hern. So that'll be later on tonight. Rita, I haven't said much. How do you already have a question?
I did mention last week, I got to mention it this week. On Sunday,
Ooh.
we've got Eddie Hammerman, which organised it. He's not speaking because he's not an expert on organs, organ donation, but he arranged it all, and it'll be on Zoom at 8:30 this Sunday coming.
Thank you very much. Hope you all heard that through my computer speaker. 8:30 Sunday night, a live talk on organ donation with none other than Eddie Hammerman. How fantastic is that? There'll also be some other people on board as well. So do tune in for that. Thank you for that plug, Rita. You are more than entitled. Pardon?
You don't have to donate on the night.
Brilliant. So, Chukat and Balak, a brief run through of the double parasha. So it's going to start off talking to us about the para aduma, the red heifer, the process of the red heifer, the ashes of which were used to as part of a purification process in the temple and in the Mishkan.
What was it used for? The ashes?
The ashes of the red heifer were used to help the process of purification when people were impure, when people were tamei. So the para aduma, the red heifer, was part of that process. So that's there for you to read about. That's the beginning of the parasha this week. We also read about the death of Miriam, Moses' sister. She unfortunately passes away in this week's parasha. And that is why we then have straight away after that the episode of Moses hitting the rock. Because the rock was providing the water for the Jewish people. When Miriam died, the merit of her well, Miriam's well, which was supplying water to the whole Jewish people, that dries up because it no longer is able to function because of her merit. She's now passed on. And so a few days later, the Jews complain that they've got no water, and that is the episode with the rock, where Moses is told to speak to the rock, and he ends up hitting the rock, and the water bursts forth, and as a result of that, he will be given his punishment, that he will not be allowed to enter into the land of Israel with everybody else. We talked a lot about that last year, and one of the conclusions that we came to when we were talking about that parasha is that it wasn't just that Moses disobeyed God and that's why he got punished. There's a mentality that we have to appreciate over here. He had the opportunity to speak to the rock and for water to come out, and that would have demonstrated to the Jewish people just how miraculous life can be. He had previously struck a rock and water had come out, so the Jewish people had seen that. And on this occasion, he was told to speak to a rock, and that would have shared with the Jewish people the message that when they go into the land of Israel, the relationship changes, and one has to speak to Hashem to be able to have that relationship and to be able to get the bounty that Hashem has in store. And unfortunately, the Jewish people missed that lesson. And what emerges then from the episode is the fact that entry into the land of Israel would require a different type of leadership. And Moses would not have been suitable for that kind of leadership. So it wasn't so much that he did something naughty and then he got a really severe punishment. It was more that we have to understand that the method of leadership was needing to change once the Jewish people entered into the land of Israel. And that is kind of essentially why Moses couldn't go in. So what that does is it shifts the focus ever so slightly from us thinking to ourselves like, oh, that's so mean, he worked so hard, why didn't he get to go into the land of Israel? But there's a bit of a perspective shift that is required to really understand the story, which is that on all occasions Hashem puts people where they need to be and gives people the things that they need. And sometimes if we look at things with a lens of, oh, I think I know what's best. But what I think that I know that what's best for Moses was to be able to go into the land of Israel. And so then when we look through those lenses of the story, we have no choice but to say, oh, what a mean God. Moses worked so hard for the Jewish people, and therefore this is a huge punishment. When actually there's another way of looking at it, which is Moses didn't need to go into the land of Israel, because if he needed it, then Hashem would have let him. So it's important when looking at these kinds of stories that we pay attention to the lenses and the mindset that we have. So that's the story with the rock and the water. And after that, the Jewish people get attacked by Amalek, that nation that has been the thorn in our side for thousands of years. After that, we read the episode of this plague of serpents that attack the Jewish people. And in order to cure everybody, Moses has to put up a copper serpent on a pole, and everyone has to look at that, and then they get healed. And that is the origin, if you weren't aware, for the logo of the health associations, where you see that pole with the snakes wrapped around it. That traces its origins back to the episode in this week's parasha. So that is Parashat Balak, and at the end they have a battle with the people of Sichon, and that finishes Parashat Chukat. But straight after that, we're going to be reading the story of Balak, King Balak, who wanted to curse the Jewish people. So he hires Bilam, a famous sorcerer, a famous non-Jewish prophet, and Bilam, under the employ of King Balak, tries to curse the Jewish people, but as we know, it doesn't end well, and he ends up blessing the Jewish people on a few occasions, one of which he says those famous words, Ma tovu ahalecha Yaakov mishkanotecha Yisrael, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. So those are the famous words that come out of his mouth, because Hashem did not want him to curse the Jewish people, so he made them bless them instead. And then finally, at the end of Parashat Balak, we read about the episode of Pinchas, the zealot, who went and killed Zimri, who was being seduced by Cosby, who was a Midianite princess, and he ends up killing both of them for the hanky-panky that they were getting up to. And that is the end of this week's parasha. There is so much to say on this week's parasha, and I think the only other thing that I will say in particular relevance to Parashat Balak is that if we think about Parashat Balak, it's an episode that happens to the Jewish people without the Jewish people ever knowing about it. So it's recorded in the Torah that they would have had no idea about any of this going on. It's not like other episodes where something has been presented, a challenge or an episode has been presented involving or to the Jewish people. The whole episode of Balak and Bilam takes place behind the scenes. They have no idea that it's going on. So that's an amazing thing to think about as well. All right, there we go. I've managed to, two people seem to have signed off just in the time for me to talk about the parasha.
Stanley's obviously, he's not used to using his new machine.
Oh, okay.
I think he's probably pressed the button and is now really upset that he's not there. Oh, here he comes back. He's back.
As long as I haven't offended anyone.
Twinger.
As long as I haven't offended anyone, that's the main thing.
I'm sure you
So let us crack on with Pirkei Avot. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's very exciting because if all things go according to plan, we will hopefully complete chapter 2. How exciting is that? Everybody say ooh. So we have 2 Mishnah lessons left, and hopefully we can do them both today. So I'm going to get it up on the screen for us here. Okay, so everyone should be able to see that. It should be coming up on the screen. Oh gosh, clicking too many things over here. There we go. And let's get it up for those of you watching on Facebook and Zoom. There we go. So, can we all see the text in front of us?
Yeah, the only thing I can see already, we're talking about Rabbi Tarfon. He's not the one of the 5, is he?
Very, very good, Rita. He is not. You are on the ball today. He is not one of the 5. We have now finished hearing from those 5, and so we have Rabbi Tarfon. It's a very interesting observation as to why it's Rabbi Tarfon. Chronologically, it seems to be out of place, but he seems to have been a student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, just like the other 5 did. But he didn't make it into that episode with the 5 rabbis. But his ideas are somewhat similar in approach and in theme, so we're going to check them out together now. So what you see before you here on the screen it says 15 and 16. In Joe's book, it's probably 19 and 20 or 20 and 21. You're muted, so we can't hear you.
20.
20. Thank you, Gary. Or was it Joe with a very deep voice? I don't know. So here we go. We'll see it in the Hebrew. We'll see it in the English as well. Rabbi Tarfon Omer, Hayom Katzar, V'hamlacha Meruba, V'hapoalim Atzelim, V'asachar Habeh, Uval Habayit Dochek. Anyone want to tell us the English?
Rabbi Tarfon said, the day is short and the work is plentiful and the labourers are indolent and the reward is great and the master of the house is insistent. Okay, everyone take a moment and see what you are picking up. Yes, so first of all, indolent does mean lazy.
This is what Peter just told me.
Why is he saying the labourers are indolent?
Okay, who are the labourers?
We are.
What is the work? Which day? What reward? Which master of the house? We have to piece all those things together.
Why is the day short? Is it normal? Is it while we pray?
There isn't much time
Yeah.
to complete our task. And we got 70 years, 310.
Please God, more. 120. Or as my father-in-law says, he says until 180, but I'll renegotiate to 150. Okay, so we've got a few things going on here. We have the day is short. So what is the day? So day in this instance seems to really mean life, or indeed any given day is very short. Time flies by. There is not enough time in the day to get everything done. So the day is short. You don't get much time. But there's loads to do. But the workers are lazy. Who are the workers? That would seem to be referring to us, people. So our lives are short. There's a lot to do. But we're a bit lazy. But the reward is very great. And the Baal Habayis, the master, who seems to refer to Hashem, is insistent. is wants us to make the most of our time. So let's see what we can pick out from just these short words. Hayom Katzar, we said life flies by. There's a shortness and uncertainty to the length of a person's life. V'hamlacha merubah, but there's a lot to do. So that should fuel our motivation and our enthusiasm for getting things done. Now, we've talked in the past about this kind of thing, and observation, just mere observation, will show that people don't always get this right, don't always get the balance right. There's a lot to do, and people's behavior and motivation are fueled in that way. Sometimes they get it right, and sometimes they get it wrong. So sometimes the fact that people have got a limited lifespan and lots to do and lots to accomplish, sometimes that has good results and sometimes that has bad results. But the point is that perhaps one could argue that because we understand that our lives are finite, we understand therefore that we've got a very small window of time to work with to make an impact in the world. And please God, people should only use those windows to make positive impacts in the world. But as we know, sometimes they do not. I had an amazing mental exercise to understand this this concept of time flying by, seizing the moment, carpe diem, and all those kinds of things. So imagine, if we can, that you've got a guy or a girl, doesn't matter, for the purpose of this exercise. The point is as follows. He gets a phone call one day, and he says, yeah.
No, but I can't see the rabbi speaking.
You can't see the rabbi speaking?
Talking.
That might just be the configuration on your screen. Maybe there's a speaker mode or gallery mode.
Is it me?
It might be. So let's imagine that somebody gets a phone call, and the guy on the end of the phone says, hey, I am going to give you £18,400 every single day to spend. You can spend it on whatever you want. At the end of the day, if you watch your online bank account at midnight, you will see whatever's left in the bank account gets deleted, and you get given another £18,400 to spend for that next 24-hour period. So why would it make any sense for a person in that situation to say, oh, I'll just spend £100 today. You know, why would I need to spend more than that? You know, I'll try and save the money. You won't be able to save the money because at midnight, whatever you didn't spend is going to get deleted, and you're going to get another £18,400 the very next day, and then you'll only have a window of 24 hours to spend that money, and then it's going to disappear, and then you'll get another £18,400. So would we encourage such an individual to say, oh, don't spend all of it, it's not important? Or would we say, what an amazing opportunity, you could spend every single penny without any consequence, without having to worry, because you know that the next day you're going to get another £18,400. And the answer would be clear. You should try and use as much of that money as you possibly can in that time. It's not going to be any use saving it because it's all going to be gone the next day. So in a similar vein, every single day we are given 18,400 seconds. Oh, that's why it came up with such a random number. We are given 24 hours comprising 60 minutes. That's 1,440. And multiply that by 60 to get the number of seconds. We are given 18,400 seconds every single day. Once that day is finished, you're not going to be able to use those seconds anymore. So the message is, the moral is to make every second count, because any second that goes, you're never going to see it again. So we've got a limited span of time, and we have to try and achieve and accomplish so much in the time that we have. The work is abundant. Physical work, spiritual work, doesn't matter what we're talking about. There's a lot to get done in our lifetime. But as we've said before, we don't get just rewarded for our results, we get rewarded for our efforts. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. The next thing that it says, the laborers, the workers are lazy. Our instinct will constantly try and tell us, oh, why do it now? I can do it later. Procrastination, delaying, whatever it might be. But this is £18,400 you've got to spend today. Take the money. Never going to see it again otherwise. So there's a caution here to not be lazy. And if we're not lazy, we will appreciate the reward is great. We won't see the reward necessarily in this world. But as we've said before, we have the faith, the conviction, the belief, the assurance that all of our actions in this world will, please God, be rewarded. And then the final message over here is the master of the house, the Balabayas, our boss, our big boss, is insistent, wants us to make the most of our time, has created a structure, a system in which we can always be occupied with doing good deeds, doing the right thing, doing the will of God, improving ourselves, improving those around us, improving our environment, improving our society. Whatever level we're talking about, there's always something to be done. Anybody got any comments before we move on?
Yeah, when it says the reward is great, it's obviously not having much impact on the labourers, so they're still lazy, so it's not really had an impact, is it?
Perhaps it's in the world to come, the reward.
That's certainly true. The caution is, you know, we can read that and say, hey, I don't want to be lazy. I'm going to try my hardest to go completely against that particular point. It's more of an observation. All of this is an observation. He's pointing out the day is short, there's a lot to do. Your instinct is going to tell you to be lazy, but don't be lazy because the reward is so great. There's so much to be getting on with. So I think that's it's more an observation in that sense, rather than one would hope that people would not be lazy, if that makes sense.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Please.
Can you hear me?
Great question. Yes, we can.
Right.
Next. No, I'm joking. Carry on.
Can I ask? We read constantly about the amount of work, the study. Is there a place within Jewish thought for people actually to self-indulge, to enjoy something which they like doing, which doesn't benefit anybody else, but which they themselves have a joy in doing?
Like Torah study.
No, I don't mean like
Jamie Raven, ladies and gentlemen! Hello!
Is there something wrong or considered to be wrong in actually having worked very hard and studied for a certain number of hours and provided for your family, and actually indulging yourself in some inane pastime like stamp collecting? Or would that be considered wrong?
So what you seem to be asking is, in everything that we've been talking about over so many months, where's the room for leisure?
Leisure that has no benefit to anybody but yourself. Is that being selfish, or are we entitled to some time out?
Absolutely yes. This question gets asked all the time in different ways and in different contexts. Am I allowed to go to the gym? Am I allowed to go for a run? In all these kinds of different spheres of life. And really the perspective is that we try and do these things, even if they only serve a benefit for ourselves. But the point is that these are indulgences that can spur us and propel us and motivate us to do other things as well. So a pursuit just for the sake of the pursuit, it might not be forbidden in the Torah, But all of these things are recommended, as it were, to be used as springboards for us to be other things. So if a person needs time in the day to relax and to be able to unwind, but the purpose of the unwinding is that they'll be able to go again. They just need that the break in the day or the break in the routine or whatever it might be. So in all of those kinds of things, the reason why we indulge in them usually is because we need them so that we can compose ourselves and go again when we're ready to go again. But if it's an indulgence which can have negative ramifications the more and more you consume of it, then we don't encourage such things. You know, a person might need a drink at the end of the day to settle their nerves, to get them ready for bed, to unwind after a hard day or whatever it is. But we wouldn't advocate getting completely plastered and poisoning your liver. That would be an overindulgence, which would be detrimental. Does that answer the question at all for you, Martin?
Yeah, it does. Yes, I just asked the question because it appears from what we study week after week and what from year after year is that the Torah doesn't actually give permission for people to just do something for themselves. You know, you can justify the gym in saying, well, it's making me strong, as you said, so that I can now go out and help the poor or help somebody lift their heavy load. I think it's very difficult to
stamp collecting has its place as well, Martin.
Just to do it and not think, you know, I'm doing this for me, not because it'll make me better able to do something for somebody else tomorrow, but you know, there should be time in life without one feeling guilty that you're doing something that you enjoy doing, that has no benefit for anybody else but you. But as you say, there are consequences, and it makes you...
Even if you're not consciously aware of it, Martin, even if you're not consciously thinking that you're doing it because it's just for you, what's happening subconsciously is you are investing in your well-being, even without realizing it. That's the purpose of it.
There's room to invest in your own well-being.
Absolutely.
Subconsciously, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. We got three people. Whoa! Who put up their hand first? I didn't notice. Can we let our newcomer, our new face, go first? Paul, is that all right?
Good.
Let's give him a go. See what he's made of.
I read a reference to this part of Pirkei Avot where the Chofetz Chaim is saying that Rabbi Tarfon was making a reference to the fact that people were living shorter at that time than they were previously. And not only were they living shorter, but he also, it wasn't just a reference to everyone else, it was a reference to himself as well, that what he could do in a short time, what a few generations ago they could do what the sages could do before in a short time, now took so much more time to learn, that was also a reference to why time was now short, because they didn't have the capability what the earlier generations had.
Interesting.
What the sages had before. Yeah.
Let's give him a round of applause. Look at that. You dived right in there, Jamie. So nice. So great. Go for it, Paul.
When you look at the works of someone like Rambam and people like that, you can't believe they wrote in their life such an amazing amount of work. I don't think anybody could repeat that in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, we had a rabbi called the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Lutzato, who died at the age of 40 after having written well in excess of over 100 books.
Most of his life, he was, I think, a diamond cutter as well.
See, I didn't even know that. You should be giving the cheer, Jamie. Absolutely.
I like the Ramchal.
He's good. Go for it, Paul.
Okay, two simple things. I'm really interested in the line that says, "The master of the house is insistent."
Mm-hmm.
Are we entitled to consider whether there is any evidence for that. It's an interesting line, and I don't disagree that it's what he said, or that's what he thought, or that's what he wanted to write down. But it's not something that usually comes through. Because there are laws, in which case it's a law. There are things we must do, in which case we must do them. But here, there's a completely different nuance that actually, Hashem is very insistent that we do it, but it's not. It's got a different meaning altogether to say this is a law, get past it, do it. And so, to me, it's a very interesting change in the way that he's put that.
What do you think? So, what do you feel like it denotes? Because again, we often have trouble when we're translating things into English, and we're all coming.
I think insistence denotes that I really, really like my children to turn the television off at 7 o'clock. I'm really insistent that they turn it off at 7 o'clock. I really, really want them to, but it's not in the same level as things in the Shema, which are quite clear. That is what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something. This is him saying to us, actually, he's really insistent that you do all this. If I was going to say that, or if that was going to come out, you would sort of, and the master of the house demands that you follow the laws of Torah. Insistence
because it's for your best.
Correct.
Because he loves you.
Correct.
But this isn't talking about
studying
halacha, because halacha is there's no question. This is what you should do, whether you do it or not. This is the law. This is talking about studying. It's like your teacher saying, we want you to do more, to be better, to help more people to live a better life. It's not a,
no, I don't quite think
it's a request for you
the second thing, Rabbi, is that you're missing the next two lines. And if you look at usually when we say these words, there are another two lines with it, that the amount of work is great, it's for us to start, but maybe it's not for us to finish. Now here, those words are left out.
No, they're not. They're on the next. They're on the next thing.
That's even. Isn't that even better? That's why I'm saying
it's one of those difficult things because they're broken up as separate Mishnah statements. But you're right. I'll tell you what, Paul. Let's dive straight into the next part.
It should be one and the same section. It shouldn't be two sections.
Okay, so then let's take that on board and dive straight into the next one. The reason why it gets divided up is because it starts with these words here, Hu haya omer, he used to say, meaning Rabbi Tarfon used to say, but it's a distinct statement from this one. So we don't necessarily have to read too much into it, especially if there are versions that combine it into one lesson. But here we go. Hu haya omer, lo alecha.
Can you hear Stanley, Rabbi?
Pardon me?
Can you hear Stanley?
Yes, we can.
Oh, you've got Stanley. Rabbi, I just wanted a bit more about Rabbi Tarfon.
Yeah.
Didn't he go on to say the task is great, we must compete, but it's not our intent. It's not our task to complete it.
That's right. We're literally about to say that right now. Hu haya omer, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor. It is not your duty to finish the work.
Yeah.
That's exactly, and that's what Paul was saying as well. Those are the very next words. And if Jamie wanted to crack out his guitar, he'd start playing for us, lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, which people may have sung in their Jewish youth group days. It is not our duty to finish the work. V'lo ata ben chorin libatel mimena. But equally, you are not at liberty to neglect it completely. Im lamadata Torah harbe, notnim lecha schar harbe. If you learn a lot of Torah, then you'll get a big reward. V'nei manhu bal malachtecha sheishalim lecha schar pulatecha. And you can count on your employer. It's interesting. Before he was a balabayit, owner, master of the house. Now he's the Baal Malacha. Now he is the employer. But you can count on him that he is going to pay you the reward of your pu'ulatecha, of your labor, of your work, of your actions. V'dam matan scharan shel tzadikim la'atid lavo. And you should know that there is a great reward in store for the righteous in the future. Or I should say that their reward is given to them in the time to come. Not just that they have a big reward, but that it comes after their lifetime. Sorry, Martin.
We talk considerably about reward, that there is a reward that in the life to come, or it's some tough for some mitzvot, your reward is granted here, like honouring your mother and your father. The reward is that you should have long days on this earth. What do the rabbis consider is the reward? If joy is carrying out the mitzvah in this life and doing what is right and proper, having pleasure for yourself alone, which is what I asked you about before, just doing something that you enjoy, if that's the reward, then it doesn't seem to add up. You know, what is reward?
Okay, well, that's a really amazing question. We do not know what it will actually look like per se, but there is something that I can share with you from Rabbi Dessler, which I read a number of years ago in Strife for Truth, which goes as follows. He says that if you want to understand how powerful, how potent, how enjoyable reward is in the world to come, he said what you need to do is you need to take all of the pleasures that you have had in your entire lifetime from the moment that you were born, and you should compress and contract all of that pleasure so that it's squished into the equivalent of one moment. All right? Imagine how incredibly powerful that reward, how much incredibly powerful that pleasure would be. Now he says, take all of the pleasure that everyone in the entire world, all 7 billion people, will have experienced in their lifetimes, and compress it somehow into one moment of concentrated, undiluted pleasure. Just imagine how pleasurable that would be. Then he says, now take all of the pleasure that everybody who has ever existed in the entire history of the planet, take all of their moments of pleasure, compress it all, contract it into one tiny drop of pleasure. So concentrated, so undiluted, so powerful. He says that wouldn't even measure to one moment in the world to come. So we don't know what that feels like. We don't know what that looks like, but conceptually, that is what we're being taught when we're taught about reward in the world to come. It's going to be this, every single one of those moments I should say like this, one moment of everything dilute, everything squished together, undiluted, would only represent one moment in the world to come, meaning that every single moment after that is that same just squished together power, potency of pleasure in the world to come. We can't necessarily understand what that means, and please God, we won't understand what that means until we get there. But stamp collecting, as enjoyable as it is, won't compare to the feeling of reward of the pleasure in the world to come. Go on, Jamie.
And also, even if stamp collecting was equal in enjoyment, the beauty is that when you're promised it in the world to come, is that will last forever. Whereas if you get your reward in this world, it will only last until you pass away. Yeah,
and listen, it's really enjoyable to eat a steak when you've got it cooked to perfection and it is grilled beautifully and it's just the way you like it and it's juicy and it's succulent, etc., etc. So that's great for one steak. Then maybe if you're still feeling hungry after that, you'll have another one and you'll have 2 juicy steaks. Incredible. But once you're doing 3, 4, 5, and 6, that level of pleasure isn't really there anymore. So all of the worldly pleasures that we have, we can take them in small doses, but we can't appreciate what it means to be able to have a pleasure that will endure for an eternity. We don't know what that means, because any pleasure that we experience in this life, it only serves a purpose for a short amount of time. However incredibly elated you feel from stamp collecting, eventually you'll get tired. Same thing with doing a puzzle. A puzzle can relax your mind. It can be extremely enjoyable, right? But you can only do it for a few hours at a time. You know, I played Monopoly with my kids last Shabbos. That was great for like the first half an hour before Dussie's just like throwing the dice all over the table because she's just given up, you know, lost the will to play. So all of the pleasures in life, we can enjoy them for a short time, but eventually it wears thin.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Rabbi, the rewards, not so sure about the reward in the world to come.
Yeah.
But you know about my latest adventure. I don't have to show you what my latest adventure is. The reward from that is terrific.
Mm-hmm. But that is the benefit. That's sometimes we can get confused between the benefit and the reward. When we're talking about a reward, it won't compare to any benefit that we get in our lifetime here. So even if things go in our way, and even though what they called our endorphins, the dopamine hit that we get from doing something pleasurable and doing something enjoyable, that's great. But we can't confuse that with the feeling that we will have in the world to come, which is a question of you know, one has to develop that conviction, that assurance, that faith in the world to come. That doesn't come easily, and it doesn't come naturally necessarily. But that's part of what we are being encouraged to do, is to have our eye on the end just as much as we do while we are getting busy here on earth. Jamie, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, it reminds me of something I read. The Rambam said once, that if you ask a blind man to describe a colour, they're not going to be able to do it. And if you ask a deaf person to describe a sound, they're going to have difficulty doing it. And because while we are a soul but in the physical world, we have extreme difficulty in understanding any of the concepts when we're not going to be in the physical world anymore, when we're just this pure soul. So when we're physical, when we're in this world, we're still thinking about everything like a human would think about it, with a physical body. That's something, and I like that. It always reminds me of why it's hard to understand the concepts of the world to come and what it will be like when we're only a spirit or soul.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Rita.
Yeah, can you explain, it's not your duty to finish the work. Is it the work to learn Torah, or is it life?
If you think about a computer game, right, your job when you're playing the computer game is to finish the computer game. When you are given homework, your job is to finish the homework. Get it done, hand it in, complete it, and it's all about that feeling of accomplishment. That's how so much of life is governed. What this missionary is saying is, it's not your job to finish the work. It's not your job to finish the work. There is no finishing the work necessarily. You don't complete Torah in the same way that you might complete a video game. You don't do everything that the world needs. There's always going to be more to be done. So it's not on us to do everything, to tick all the boxes, if that's how you see mitzvot. That's not our job. Our job is to do as much as we can. As we've said before, God rewards us for our effort, and not just for the results. So that's what this is driving at. When it says it's not your duty to finish the work, it means Hashem is not asking us to only do the things that we know that we can finish. He's asking us to try. He's asking us to invest. He's asking us to have the will, the desire to try and to get involved and to get our hands dirty. But your reward and your yardstick of success is not going to be measured by whether you got it done or not. As we said, we gave the example last week of going to the hospital to visit somebody who's unwell, and you get there and the nurse tells you, oh, we discharged them already this morning, and you're like, oh man, no, it's like I've done nothing. What a wasted journey. That might be true in a results oriented lens, but in Hashem's eyes, you went to do a mitzvah of bikur cholim, of visiting a sick person. So it's about the effort, not about whether or not it got finished or not. Were you about to say something, Martin?
I remember I had the fortune of going to Carmel College with Rabbi Koppel Rhodes of the blessed memory, and I remember him telling us he felt the explanation of this phrase was, don't look at a job and think it is so impossible for me to finish, I'm not going to even start. You won't have the capacity to finish, but make, as you said, make the effort. Go along the way. You just don't know what you can accomplish if you start. You put the first step forward into the task.
There's two amazing parables that I'd like to share with you on this. Number one is, if we were to imagine that a great king was to say to you, look, I'm going to lock you in my royal treasury for an hour. Take whatever you can get from my royal treasury. So the guy gets locked in, he looks around, and it's just piles, enormous mountains of golden coins and crowns and jewels and gems, and all he's got is a couple of sacks on the floor for him to start. So he starts picking up the coins, and he's going for a couple of minutes, and he fills up a bag, and he's just like, I haven't even made a dent in this treasury. What's the point? So for the other 55 minutes, he just sits down, gives up. What's the point? I can't take everything, so what's the point in even trying? And then they open up the door after an hour, and he sees he's filled up one small sack there of gold coins, and you'll think, what a wasted opportunity. You could have got all that gold. What a waste. So in the same way, if we look at life and we look at all of the things that we need to get done, and we're just like, what is the point of even trying? Maybe that links a little bit back to what we were saying about the workers being lazy. Sometimes we can look at everything there is out there to do, all of the investments that need to be made in all the different relationships that we need to try and have, and in our jobs and in our Torah and in our lives and whatever it is. And we can look and we're like, it's just too much. What is the point in even trying? But that's not the way that God looks at it. God looks at it as, whatever you can do while you are here, that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking you to do everything. I'm asking you to do whatever you can. That's mashal number one. That's parable number one. Number two is, there's a story in the Talmud. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but this guy is walking along the street, and he sees a guy planting a carob tree. And he says, why are you planting a carob tree? They take like 70 years to grow, and you're already an old man. You're not going to see that carob tree when it's grown and it finally produces fruit. And the guy responded to him, says, I'm not planting it just for myself. I'm planting it for everything that comes after me. In the next generation, there will be people that will be able to take advantage of this carob tree. When the tree does bear fruit and where the carobs do start to grow, even though I won't enjoy it, there'll be people after me who'll be able to enjoy it in place of me. So that's also a perspective with all of this. You're not going to finish the job. You might just be setting it up so that somebody else can take the project on, so that they can take it to the next level, so that they can get it finished. But if we only invest in the things that we know that we can have absolute control over, and that it's all on us, and I can't ask for anyone for help. So that's not a healthy attitude either. So we have to have that in mind as well. Joe, I'm sorry, I think you were going to say something before. But you are muted, so we can't hear you.
And one of the rewards is surely in this life is inner satisfaction and peace of mind. That if you've done the right thing, you'll have peace of mind, and that's a reward. It's
a benefit. It's a benefit, but we can't think that that's going to compare any amount to the reward that we have waiting for us.
In this life, I mean, in the world to come, that's a different thing.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. That's why it's a very difficult thing, because we have moments of pleasure in our lives. We have times when the chemicals in our brain tell us that we are feeling pleasure, and it can be an immensely deep pleasure. And you could think, how could life get any better than this? You know, when you hold your newborn child in your arms for the very first time, you think, how could life get any better? Well, I'll tell you, the world to come is way more pleasurable. But as we were saying, as Jamie was putting it before as well, we don't have the tools to understand what that means. So while we might have benefits in our lifetime, while we might have immense moments of pleasure and pride and all the rest of it, that's a wonderful thing, and one can't take it for granted. But that's not the same thing as the reward that we're talking about. You know, even holding the baby for the very first time feels amazing until they poop all over you, right? And then you think to yourself, why was I doing all this again? Yeah, go on, Peter.
In the last two sentences, is the reward referred to the same reward, or is it talking about two different types of reward? It says, faithful as your employers, pay you the reward of your neighbour. And when it says pay, it's almost like it's payment now. And then it goes on to say, and know that the grant of reward unto the righteous is in the age to come.
Yeah.
So that's a later time.
Yeah.
Is it one and the same reward, and that it is in the age to come, or?
That's a really, really profound question. And it touches on something which is incredibly difficult to explain. But I will do what I can. The short answer is yes. The short answer is yes. The reward is the same. But here's the thing. So it goes kind of like this. The age-old question of why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? Why does it seem that wicked people seem to get so rewarded in this world? So we do have an understanding that that the system may be set up in a way to benefit people in this world so that they don't get any reward in the world to come. So I guess you could put it as follows. If a person, pardon me?
And the opposite way around.
And the opposite way around as well, that's right. A person could go through immensely hard times in this world because the true benefit is going to come to them at a later time. But if we can think of it in the following way, if somebody had a particularly wicked streak in them, particularly evil streak in them, and yet we see that they prosper, we see that they benefit, and we see that they seem to just have all of the pleasures in this world. So one of the things which, again, is very difficult to comprehend is enjoy it while it lasts now, because once you leave this world, you ain't getting nothing, right? In a way, God kind of pays them off in this world so that he doesn't have to have anything to do with them when they leave the world. So that's why you do see the reason why it's a difficult thing to combine with everything that we've been saying is for the following reason. You see people struggling, especially the sages in the Talmud. You do see instances where the rabbis have been proud of the fact that they have never ever taken any benefit from this world. And you see episodes in the story in the Talmud stories where rabbis on their deathbed have said, I haven't even benefited as much as my little pinky finger in this world. So that does seem to produce a bit of a paradox, because on the one hand we're saying righteous people don't want any reward in this world because they're happy to take it all in the world to come. You see wicked people who are going to be given all of their reward in this world, and they're not going to be given anything in the world to come. And then you have all of us in between, who we might say, yes, I get that there's a reward for me waiting in the world to come, but I kind of want to be a little bit happy in this world as well. And I kind of want to have a little bit of pleasure in this world as well. So that's always what we're talking about. We're talking about the two extremes, and then us, who appear somewhere in the middle of that. And so could one say that there is a very lofty level to reach where you don't expect any pleasure in this world, any benefit from this world, because you understand that it's all just the corridor, the waiting room before you get your pleasure in the world to come? Yes, that is an amazing level if you're able to reach it. But if you are able to reach that level, you should be giving the class, not me. Most of us are somewhere in between, where we need the dopamine kicks, we need the pleasures in this world a little bit, but to nonetheless not lose sight of the fact that one day our principal reward is going to come to us in the world to come. So even if we do see benefits, even if we do see pleasures, that's not necessarily because we're wicked, but because life is about this balance. So don't get too worried if you are enjoying pleasures in this world, and don't get too worried if you are receiving benefit, because if you're a good person and you're trying your hardest and you're understanding that it's about your effort and it's not about just getting the results and all the rest of those things, then we are also promised reward in the world to come as well. So I hope that kind of answers the question, Peter.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of chapter 2, which means that we say the words that appear at the end of every chapter. Rabbi Hananya ben Akashya Omer, Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lazakos Es Yisrael Lefichach Hirba Lahem Torah Mitzvos Shneimar Adonai Chafetz Laman Sidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir. Rabbi Hananya ben Akashya said, Hashem wants to give us so much merit. He wants us to have benefit in the world to come. He also wants us to enjoy this world as well. And that's why he lets us eat and he lets us drink and he lets us do all these kinds of things, everything in moderation and in a healthy way, of course. But he wants us to accrue and accumulate merit. And that is why he gave us so many things to do in this world. It ties in so nicely to everything that we've been saying. That there is so much to do in this world. And the reason why there's so much to do is because he wants us to do it and to get the benefit of it and to get the merit for it and to get the pleasure for it. That's the reason why he has done it in that way and configured the system, the matrix, in such a way. So yeah, Mazel Tov everybody on completing chapter 2, and we will pick it up next week. That's all we've got time for. To everyone on the recording, we're going to say goodbye. But if you want to join us for the after party, we're still on Zoom. But we will see you all next week. Have a wonderful, meaningful day and a Shabbat Shalom for when it comes. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.